Microphone checker, checker, 1, 2, 3.
Good afternoon. I would like to call to order the January session of the Parks and Recreations Commission, and I would like to start our day with the Pledge to the Flag led by Josh Stewart from our Pee Wee Recreations Department. If you'll come right up here.
Our backs are to you, don't be shy.
All right. Ready? Come on, you grab this one. Okay, over here. Ready?
We pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good job.
Yeah, good job, buddy. All
Thank you,
right.
Josh. This has become so popular, I wanted to let everybody know that the council is now using the same format to start their meetings. Director Alvarado, could we have the roll call?
Chair Boley,
Present.
Vice Chair Coldonado,
Here.
Commissioner Armstrong,
Here.
Commissioner Cohen called and said he would not be available today. Commissioner Goodman,
Here.
Commissioner Crawford,
Here.
Commissioner Diaz, and Commissioner Lamort.
Here. Report of the posting of the agenda.
The agenda for this meeting was posted at City Hall, the Palm Springs Leisure Center, and on the city's webpage on Wednesday, June 22nd, 2020, as required and established by policies and procedures.
Thank you. Commissioners, I think you all received a copy of the minutes. Does anyone have any discussion or comments, corrections, additions? Do we have a motion to accept the minutes? Charles, second.
I'll second.
Ellen, in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Director, do we have any correspondence today?
When you received the agenda and the minutes, you were also sent the correspondence that was from Mr. Somers in regards to Rimrock Cove proposed park that he would like to discuss.
That's the only correspondence. If someone wants to elaborate on it for comments, then we can for agendizing it. Okay, we're up to public comment, and this time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Parks and Recreations Commission on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter of our jurisdiction. Although the commission values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, generally we can't take action on items that are not listed or posted on our agenda. We have 3 minutes for each person that would like to be on the public comment, and we have a place right over here, whoever would like to go first.
That's a first.
Either or.
Hi, my name is Barry Adams. I was referred to this committee by Ms. Alvarado. I was interested in putting in some feedback regarding the jog parks. My issue is that I've been working on the problem of dogs being left unattended in cars for 13 years. And I moved to Palm Springs 5 years ago. So I've been working on that around the town. And when I saw the notice that you were taking input on the design of the dog parks, I thought it was a very strategic place to put information out to the public, places where people with dogs go to educate the public on the dangers. And I submitted a letter, which I was told you all have a copy of. So I won't go through that whole thing for you, but I just wanted to come, and I brought some material that I'm going to leave with you that you can look over. One is, this is an example of a sign that was placed in municipal parking lots in a town in Vermont that was passed by the a similar committee and then approved by the town select board. So there's a number of options to do this, but my passion is protecting dogs. And I think strategically, a dog park, veterinarians, pet supply stores and so on are places to start. And this was just the first opportunity that I saw where the city opened it up for me to come and run my mouth. Also, I brought some examples here I distribute information all over the city of Palm Springs, sometimes dressed in a puppy costume. I do all kinds of odd things. But these are the postcards that I distribute. They're in English and Spanish. And these are in enlarged versions that I'm just now starting to laminate and distribute to anybody who wants them. I provide these free to any business or person that's interested. And I have a lot of interest out there. So that's why I'm here. I just wanted to propose that if there's going to be revisions to dog parks or new dog parks, that you consider doing this, because I think it's a very positive thing for the community. So I'll leave these. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And how can I follow up? How can I follow up with you? I mean, in terms of the decision and the discussion. If there's any discussion, I hope you'll contact me, because I would really like to be part of this.
We have a subcommittee. We have a subcommittee with the dog parks that is chaired by Travis and Eleanor on it, and they'll be working with that and probably be the best bet.
Okay. We got that. He's with me because I can't hear, so he's my ears.
So, in the best way for Barry to contact Travis and Ellen is it through someone?
I think for me, I think having Cynthia
Yes.
be the point of contact to be able to communicate, that would be great. And if you could leave the handouts with us, that'd be great also. You have them, okay.
And Cynthia, have you already been in touch with Barry?
So Janet has emailed him,
Okay.
and so he has Janet's,
I met you.
yes.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. That's my letter.
Okay, thank you. Are there,
Thank you. Thank you.
are there any other public comments? Okay, if not, we will close our public comments and move on to our city manager's comments. I see the assistant city manager sitting back there smiling. Marcus, do you have anything to say?
I'm ready for you to proceed.
All right. Director Alvarado, could we have our staff updates?
Yes. I left my staff updates on my printer, apparently, but I will go ahead and I was just going to be highlighting all of the events that were going to be hosted by our Black History Committee this month. In February, we have a basketball adult tournament, and I'm just trying to find the flyers. We have Gospel Fest, the tournament, and the parade.
Tournament is February
22nd.
22nd at Duluth Community Center. Parade and Town Fair is the 29th,
Yes.
11 a.m. downtown.
Yes. Then we have some tournaments that'll be happening at Duluth, and the Power baseball season has started.
Jody, what was your date again? What was that?
February 9th, Sunday, from 2 to 4 p.m. is the Gospel Fest, and it will be on the outdoor stage at James O'Jesse Desert Highland Unity Center Park.
That concludes your comment? Okay, then we will close staff updates and move on to discussion and action items. Our first discussion is discussion on the park projects update. Marcus Fuller.
Yeah, I should have just come over here.
I called Donna, too. I think he's got a list.
Don? Good evening, Commissioners. Marcus Fuller, happy to be here. I think you all know Don Uyeno, Senior Engineer, and he can give you some detailed updates on some of our projects.
Is this for the facility or?
Any Parks and
Okay. Right, so,
The downtown park and the one going to the dog park.
you want to talk about downtown park? Okay.
So I think you saw, we were all pleased to see some of that dirt leave the site at the downtown park this last week. The project's still on schedule. A lot of the work you can't see is underneath. They've done some of the demo in the adjacent garage. They've been constructing the equipment room that's actually underneath for the pump and other mechanical equipment for that huge water feature that's going to be installed. And so they've started removing some of that grading, and they will be starting this week, I believe, or next week with the police substation. So there's a lot of work that's underway. And just as a reminder, this was a 12-month project, so the completion is scheduled towards the end of November. So we are happily moving forward with that project. And I'll give you more updates next month.
Also in the hopper, I guess, we have the resurfacing of the pickleball courts as well as the tennis courts at Ruth Park. We're having the specifications and plans so that it could go out to bid. I'm also, well, it's on your number 2 item, the laser leveling of the softball fields. We put that out to bid. We got 0 bidders, but now we are negotiating with one company to get a good price as far as the 8 softball fields at Duluth, the stadium and Sunrise, as well as the baseball field at James O'Jesse. So we're negotiating the price with the contractor. Hope to take that to the next council meeting or the first meeting in February, once we get a good price for that. What else are we doing? We've started on the restrooms. Let's see, we have, I think the subcommittee met with Mike Lightar of our staff for the Sunrise restroom bathrooms. We also have a proposal for Victoria Park. They're all kind of going to look very similar. Ruth Hardy Park would follow that one, and then Duluth, the several restrooms at Duluth Park, that one is part of our ADA Phase 2. We've gone through the ADA, so this includes all the walkways to the concession stands, the bathrooms, through, there was a whole comprehensive ADA report that was done. So we've been going through the report line by line, putting the project together. So that's in the works. What else was there? Duluth Community Center fire sprinklers. We're pretty much, I have to give you an update on that, but we're also working on that. And then there's a bunch of facility projects. I don't want to steal your thunder on discussion, but they're part of the facility maintenance. This is routine maintenance, deferred maintenance that have gone on, included a bunch of city facilities, including the Community Center window replacement, the carpet and flooring. If you notice, the vinyl has asbestos underneath, so we're going to replace that. And what else? Door replacements at the Leisure and Pavilion. Window replacements. I think if you watch the council meeting, they kind of asked the doors and the windows to kind of be put on hold. And then the HVAC system at Leisure and Pavilion. So those are kind of the park-related projects that we all have in the hopper. I know you've been having discussions on your own. But I just wanted to give you that update of what we were working on.
Okay, great. Does anyone have any questions for Don or Marcus on that? Commissioner Goodman?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just curious, do you have any completion plans for the restrooms? It sounds like it's very early, but I'm wondering, what your timeline is.
It is. We've got probably 100 projects we're trying to get through the process. So what I had asked, because with Duluth, for example, the bulk of that 1.6 million was to go towards ADA upgrades, like at the concession stand and the snack shack and some of the restrooms that were deficient in, door openings and other ADA requirements. So we'll be asking our on-call architects to take that report, basically prepare the plans and give us an estimate of the cost to do all those retrofits. And then that informs us on how much is left over to do other restroom upgrades. But I think the big work you've helped us on was coming up with kind of a cookie cutter approach to how to do these renovations or rebuilds for our bathrooms. Because I think it's going to be simply more cost effective, unfortunately, but just to demo some of these older restrooms and do this new, all gender neutral kind of approach to single stall restrooms. And so we'll be moving that forward. I asked, and I'm working with Mike Lightar, one of our engineers, to also get proposals from some of our architects of doing plans to renovate, again, the other restrooms like at Victoria Park and at Ruth Hardy, just so that we have everybody underway, ready to go, even with plans prepared, so that we're better prepared when we come to you and Measure J Commission to say, well, we need this much money to do these restrooms, including new restrooms, whether it's at Desert Highland or at the dog park. And of course, we'll be discussing those new projects with you and the Measure J Commission here in the next few months. But we're really trying to be strategic as we start to work on these restroom projects that deal with what's funded now as well as in the future. So if I'm being realistic, I think that we'd be in construction maybe by the end of the year. It just depends how long it's going to take the architects, because unfortunately we're seeing that architects are just in short supply. A lot of times they don't respond because they're just too busy. They have enough work on their own plate, So when economies are good, it's tough to get projects through the process. And of course, the cost of the projects is even going higher and higher. So we're doing what we can to get these projects because they're very important, we know, for you and for the public.
Okay. Commissioner Lamarck?
Just so I understand, I was under the impression that the Measure J money, what was it, 1.6 million? That maybe 4 or 6 of that was for ADA and the rest was for restrooms, not ADA. What I think I just heard you say was most of that money is going to the ADA and not necessarily to rebuilding new restrooms.
There was a $1.2 million estimate to finish the ADA improvements at Duluth Park. But we really need to get an architect on board to really develop the drawings and give us a real estimate of what, it's little things like reducing the height of the counter at the snack shack so it's compliant with ADA. And, there's a whole host of things that just were not, a lot of that stuff was built in the 70s and 80s before there was really ADA standards. And so there's a lot of that kind of work that needs to be detailed and estimated.
We also had a discussion, part of the subcommission that talked about it, and one thing that Stacy had brought up was that the design they had come up with was not acceptable only because the doors went all the way to the ground, and we suggested that perhaps there had to be 2 feet perhaps from the bottom and some from the top. And I'm just curious if that has been worked into the architectural plans.
I believe so. My preference would be that somebody needs to be able to see if somebody's in the stall or not. So, I think those final details will be brought back to this commission for review before we go to council for approval to bid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last thing, Ruth Hardy Park, are we planning to remodel that and leave it as a mid-century modern type building and just fix it rather than knocking it down and putting a new facility in there?
Yes. That was the direction we got from the council.
Okay, thank you.
So the rough breakdown of the 1.6 million that was approved for park restrooms, we kind of penciled in 200,000 for the Sunrise Park restrooms, 200,000 for Victoria Park, 400,000 for Ruth Hardy Park, and then 800,000 for the various restrooms at Duluth Park. So that's kind of just a rough, breakdown. And as we save money in the design and all that kind of stuff, then I guess the direction I think I heard from council was any leftovers would go to James O'Jesse, Dog Park, and then Francis Stevens was the third one.
How much of that 1.6 was for the ADA?
That's a different pot of money. That was just strictly rest.
Yeah, okay.
Really?
Oh, got it. Johnny just showed me here. I see it.
Okay.
As Commissioner Lamort said, I thought that was for the restroom renotification also, was my understanding. And when we had the initial, and then they were going back, the lady was there, the architect was there, I thought that wanted to start the next day on drawing them out. So we were hoping to see something moving along for these, because just like the concession stands, these restrooms were built in the 20s too. And it does look bad. Are there any other comments or questions for these two gentlemen? Okay, thank you very much. Do you have anything else you want to add?
I'm just going to save it for the next item.
Okay, moving on, the next item is the discussion on the Duluth softball field. Johnny, you're the lead, Commissioner Caldonato.
Yeah. First, I want to thank Stacy's team for getting the fields back together, getting them green, getting them going. I've been out there personally and witnessed a lot of good softball tournaments. The fields are coming along. There is some work that definitely needs to be done as far as the lasering, and but they've done a really good job. So I want to point that out first and foremost. I also noticed there's some influx of characters going and how do I put this? Using the restrooms inappropriately, and I think that's something that we need to address. It's there's kids. I don't even know if I'd like my sons to go over there into the bathrooms because of what's going on. And I was witness to something just the other day, and we can't have that. We gotta figure something out on that part of it. We've got some pictures taken of some of the fields, and I'm just gonna upload those to the app. That way Stacy's team can take a look at them and see there was a fence issue and some growth issue and stuff like that. So I think once we take those pictures, and I've got them, which is the good part, and so I will just have them uploaded and see how we can move with that. The lighting seems to be really good. There is an issue on field 8, that far left pole, there's 3 lights that are out, and I know we had just fixed them, so I don't know what happened there, but just 3 of them on the one side. Doesn't really affect the outfield too much, but it kind of does, so that's something that we might have to look at.
Generally, because as we were talking earlier, we have to rent a very specific lift, boom lift, to get to those. So for the most part, the rule of thumb is when we get closer to 8 to 10, so it really is more cost effective when we bring that out, because we have to protect the fields and and it's a it's a bit of an event to get that rented and get it out here and get it up. So if it affects field play, that's totally different. But for the most part, and unfortunately with lights, a lot of times we put them all in at the same time, so they all tend to burn out at the same time. But we couldn't wait any longer on that particular section, which is why you know that we just did it.
Right. So. And then there was another issue with on field 7 when we have a softball tournament. These balls are getting hit out into the dog park. Just the other day, a gentleman got his car hit. There's actually 2 cars that got hit. But the drama part of it was when the ball almost hit his dog. He got pretty excited about it. I was in my golf cart. I was able to go over there and talk to him, had the folks move their cars away from it. But I think having a net, and I think that's part of maybe the all paws on deck type of scenario we're going to be looking at, that this fence, some kind of netting in the back, just on field 7 for partial, so that those balls don't go into that park, because they're softballs, but they are very hard when they hit you. So
Or even just the signage, like when you pull into the library parking lot, it says, you know, you're next to a baseball field, like a ball could hit your car, we're not responsible for it. And that signage is in that library parking lot, so I'm just thinking maybe something similar.
that's a great idea.
I'm just curious. I was actually at the dog park in Duluth on Saturday, and there was a warm-up for a tournament, and somebody was standing in the parking lot where people are parking for the dog park to be able to catch balls. But I will tell you, I was petrified. You know, I just didn't know if I was going to have a flying ball inside of the fenced area. So I appreciated that somebody was by the parking lot. So I guess my question would be, is that a softball field? Is that a field agenda item, or is that a dog park agenda item? You know, putting that netting up, where would that fall?
It's not really in a foul ball zone, which is normally what we would deal with for ball fields. And since we're still in the...
It's home run.
Yeah, it's home run. Since we're still in the rendering plans, if it's not already on there, we'll definitely we'll look at the architect adding that element around that edge of the dog park.
Okay, dog park. Thank you.
That's it for me.
Director, do you have any other updates or on things that we have been doing down there at the Duluth Parks that you wanted to bring up to us?
I think most of you probably know we have made some pretty good headway with the gopher and ground squirrel problems at Desert Highland as well as Duluth. It's still, a cautionary tale. Every day, folks are out there trying to make sure those holes are filled and that we don't have any lumps laying around. But if you notice any spikes or any areas in particular that need our attention, please let me know. Beyond that, I think we had a really good meeting up at Desert Highland, and I'm looking forward to the community garden and some other opportunities up there. And obviously, the dog park is open and well-loved, well-used, well-trafficked. Very much so. And I think, again, want to thank everybody for the participation and the feedback for the new potential dog parks. That's really it.
We have for direct staff as appropriate. I think everything has pretty much been covered in this, is what we have. But Director Schaefer, I would like you to stick with us for the next subject that we're going to talk about, which is if we have nothing more on the Duluth,
No, we're good.
then I would like to move on to discussion of the dog park community meeting and the review of the conceptual plans. I had the opportunity to go to both of these and observe, and we have Commissioner Armstrong and Commissioner Goodman here to give us some updates as to what has been going on at the direction of Director Alvarado at the meeting. So I'm going to turn it over to the three of you and to report back to the rest of the commission on what's happening with the dog parks.
All right, so I will take you through the PowerPoint that I quickly put together before this meeting, just so that we could have a visual. For those of you who didn't get to attend the meeting, oh, don't fail me now. All right, so we've held two All Paws on Deck meetings with the community. The first one was December 21st, 2019. And we had about 40 attendees at that meeting. There we discussed the good, bad, and the ugly, what we liked about our dog park, what we liked about other dog parks, and what we didn't like about our dog park, and how are we going to get to a place where we felt better about our dog park. So as that meeting went on, we, at the end, showed the first draft of the conceptual plan that was basically put together from different phone calls that we were receiving from the community or emails. to really start the brainstorming process of what we were going to do with the dog park over at Duluth. I know for a long time it's just been how it is right now, and I think with the high traffic that we have at the Palm Springs Dog Park, it really launched this to solidifying it as a real official additional dog park to our park family. So the first slide that you'll see here is Duluth Park, and this is what we showcase the community. The red square over here that says large dog park is currently what is being used. Sorry, triangle. It is my Monday. So this is currently where the dog park at Duluth is right now, and we get a lot of traffic there as well. And then there's it doesn't show it on here, but there's a smaller dog park over in this area, and I don't know if you can see my mouse there. So, and my laser pointer doesn't work on TVs. So, but so in the conceptual design that we had drafted, you'll see as we move to that design that the smaller dog park is over here with the smaller triangle. So with the community, while we were looking at this, we began to have discussions and they started to get ideas. And so we kind of said, hang on to those. We're going to do another meeting and we'll bring the conceptual drafts there and you guys can mark them up and we can talk about, how you want this to look, what you like about the conceptual design, and then we'll go from there. This is the conceptual design that was drafted, and it's just a very pre-conceptual design. This isn't what is going to be final, but this is what was presented to the community at our January 20th meeting. We had about 35 people in attendance. So here you'll see this would be the large dog park, and you'll find a parking lot, and then some additional landscape and some shading with a walkway, and then the area here would be DG. It is kind of small, and I apologize, but on here you'll see that there's additional trash cans and water fountains. There would be some seating. If you look at the lower left corner, that really light map, it kind of showcases the large dog park there and the small dog park and how it would look if you were looking at the first map that I showed you. Then, sorry.
Small dog park. Right.
Sorry. In the top right corner, you see the conceptual design for the small dog park, which would be on closer towards the pickleball section of the park. And there you find that it would be DG, it'd be fenced in, you would have some shade, some lighting, some trees. And so when we were showing our community this, they said, we do not want the dog park separate, we want them together. And that was very, very important to them. So in the next slide, you'll see some of the renderings from the community. And again, I apologize, they're small up here, but I didn't have enough wall space to put them up for you here. But the main themes really were, they wanted to see the large and small dog park together. They wanted to see the landscaping, the decorative landscaping go away and have the walkway for the large dog park push more towards the fence. They wanted to see the small dog park be moved and replace that parking area that you see up here. That way they could be together. And they also did want to see a walkway in the small dog park as well, so those who own small dogs could also get their walks in. They wanted to add additional water fountains, and they wanted to take the shade from being spread out in the dog park to being in the middle with some cluster seating. They did not want to see the entrance shaded because they were afraid that that would stop traffic from going in and out quickly. So they said, get rid of that. We want the traffic to keep moving in smoothly so we don't have any issues. What else did they say? I'm going to take you to the next slide.
Can I
Go
say
ahead.
something?
Mm-hmm.
So if that's what they want, and they put that small dog park here where they were gonna asphalt and use it for parking,
Mm-hmm.
well, that's field 7, and those balls are gonna be flying, so then the whole net's gonna have to go around the whole side of that pretty much. That's something to think about.
Right. And that was a part of what we talked about in those meetings too. So I'm going to take you to the next slide, which shows two more renderings from the community. But essentially, this was like the summary list from that meeting. So they want to see the large and small dog park together, remove the decorative landscaping, move the walkway closer to the fence line, relocate the shade structures with cluster seatings. A few groups wanted to see a sand pit and a water feature added to the design. They requested to add an emergency exit near, kind of by the ball fields in the walkway to be able to get to the restrooms quicker. They felt the restrooms were a little bit removed from the dog park and would make it quite the hike to get there. They wanted to see additional fountains and spigots. They wanted, so it's not in these drawings, but in the drawings for the city dog park, the Palm Springs Dog Park, there was a picture of a cement bone-shaped bench. They said, absolutely not, get rid of that. We've tried it out.
It's to the left of the wooden bench on all of them.
We've tried it out over at Rancho, and we don't like it.
We have it.
Oh, really? Yeah. So they
We have one.
yeah. And then obviously parking is of great concern. With so much activity at Duluth Park, they were just concerned that there wouldn't be enough parking to have everything at the park at the same time. And if possible, adding a restroom closer to the dog park area would be on the wish list. And then, of course, the overhead netting to protect the users from stray baseballs during games or practices. That pretty much summarizes all the different groups that work together at this meeting. I think when we originally started, we were a little bit concerned because it almost felt like there were going to be 8 different ideas coming from 8 different places. And once we set them off to do their working session together, they all came back and pretty much said the same thing, which was amazing. But I will let Ellen and Travis talk a little bit more about the meeting itself, but I wanted to showcase the renderings of what the community did say so that we could have to reference.
Excellent. I think you really captured everything. And I do think that when the community came together, they were assertive the first few minutes, feeling like I don't know what anyone expected, but it was pretty shocking that at the end of it, 30 to 40 people, 35 people really were on the same page, came together as a community. I think they were also surprised. Yeah, they were, it was great. And I've been to the dog park a couple of times since the meeting, and I'm just getting really good feedback. One thing that I think is missing, and maybe it was the way we advertised it, I do think some people wanted to talk about the City Hall dog park. There seems to be a chronic issue at the dog park with the foot traffic. We had a pretty wet holiday season, and it was shut for 8 weeks and for reseeding. And if you go there this evening, there's really no grass left. And so it's chronic, and this has been going on year after year, and I know that we tried to address it a number of years ago. So I do think that the City Hall folks are feeling a little left out of the discussion, since we didn't maybe say this was a Duluth dog park planning session. We said it was a dog park. So I think some voices aren't heard, and I don't really know what the solution to that would be, but I do think we should be addressing some of the problems at City Hall. So let's see, what else could I say? I will say that at the Duluth Park, I was very surprised because one of the things that came up was the sand area, the sand pit, for digging and for play. And I thought, oh, well, are dogs really digging? And I was shocked at the Duluth Park. The holes, I mean, you could literally get to the center of the earth. I couldn't believe there were like 4 huge holes, and I was like, wow, dogs are really digging. And so I do think that, DG, I'm a component of sustainability and long-term solutions. And so I think we do want to look for something, especially with the larger dogs. All in all, I'm like I said, I've been going to the dog park. I would have to say I'd sign off on it. It feels like it would fit my needs. I thought everybody did a great job.
Well, first I want to thank the city for having the meetings. It's been really great. No matter what happens, people have had their chance to voice their opinions. If they haven't come, they didn't come. But I do think at the beginning of the last meeting, there was some animosities, but toward the end of it, people seemed to be on the same page. I mean, there's a lot of issues, though, that we really didn't get into, like the ground cover, because people were really talking about kind of some of the bigger issues. And so I think that's for future meetings. But obviously, the small dog park, people really want it to be to gather, and they voice their reasons, which somewhat surprised me because sometimes that community and the larger dog people don't get along, but people made a case of why they like to go back and forth. And I think that's one thing to remember when we're talking about large dog park and small dog park. Right now, we don't have a large dog park and a small dog park. We have a small dog park and a main dog park that anybody with any size dog can go into. So that's a policy decision that he has to make. Are we going to have the large dog park be for large dogs? Because right now it's not. You can take your small dog into the main park and there's no restriction at all. And that was one reason that some of the members of the community wanted to be able to go back and forth. They have dogs that they feel comfortable going on both sides. Some people with small dogs don't feel comfortable with that. And there are actually some people with large dogs who are, especially elderly dogs, come to the small dog park because they feel comfortable with that. And I wanted to bring that up as a future discussion if we're going to actually do the restrictions. Many of the people at the park did mention the Rancho Mirage Park, and I did go there this weekend, and I do think it may be worth a field trip. I mean, they have some interesting things, how they haven't put DG in the middle. They put some turf in the middle and DG around, and it's a really wonderful park. And it was totally packed when I was there, and they seem to have done things very low maintenance too, which is really good. And even with the turf, it seemed like there'd be ways to kind of take care of the turf if we did have turf. So I don't know if we could do a field trip or something like that, but I think that would be another thing to do when we get into the design of it, because it just seems so clean and neat and easy to do. So I just wanted to mention, though, just for the small dog people, I think we did allay their concerns. When we showed those maps, if you looked at the small dog park, there wasn't much amenities on there, and the big dog park had all these trees and canopies, and that kind of fed into this feeling of the small dog community that they're not really getting from the city their kind of equality, of it. So I think we explained to them these were just conceptual designs, but in the process, we'll be looking at that in the walkways and stuff like that. And then I just wanted to say, I do think there's a real concern. This started a little bit of concerns about the City Hall dog park, and you see that not many people showed up today here. I think hopefully that's because they had their say at our meetings, but there is a contingent of people out there who feel let down because we're on this path to have a second dog park. And my opinion is once we get this, it's going to help the the regular dog park, because it's not going to be as many people there. But there are some people that just don't see it that way. So somewhere in our process, we need to think about that. And I will mention, because I was there the last 4 days, some of the things that people are still concerned about is the cleaning. We added this third day, which is good, but then it closes the park a third day, and then people are saying, what's going on that day? Or they're locking the gates and not really doing anything. So and then also, there's a huge parking problem at City Hall right now. I mean, when I went there, there's no parking. People from this medical center are now parking in the City Hall lot. And I don't know if the city can do something. There's been some suggestions about putting like 2-hour parking over here, because there's really, people are just driving around. They can't find anywhere to park. I guess there's been some changes over there, and so I don't think that's really meant for the businesses over there. But anyway, I want to thank everyone. It's been really a great experience, and Ellen and Cynthia, thank you.
So in addition to the PowerPoint presentation, I did also email out a draft this morning of what the staff report that'll be going to council this Thursday. We are trying to seek some grant funding for this project. But if that doesn't happen, we'll continue to work with trying to secure some dollars through Measure J. But of course, we'll take free money first, right? So the item will be going forth on Thursday. It is a 50-50 grant match. The deadline for the grant application is February 3rd, so it's kind of quick. We have brought on MVR Consulting to do the grant application for us like they did Prop 68. The conceptual plan that we did look at first before we got into the community drawings is what's going to be submitted for now. But as we continue to develop this with the community, that design will be updated through the grant process, which we are capable of doing. So this isn't the final design that is going in there. It's just our filler for now until we finalize it with our community. Do you guys have any questions?
I do. The parking lot, because I read that last one you sent over. The parking lot at the community center for the field 7 and 8.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to be, look like it, you guys have
Yes,
a
it'll be a
proposed-
part of the grant,
Oh,
and
that'd
we are
awesome.
asking to actually make it a legit parking lot with slurry seal and all that good stuff and actual marked parking
That would be-
stalls.
that's awesome.
So that'll be a part of the grant application as well.
Just to expand on that parking situation that Commissioner Armstrong said, we had the meeting on Martin Luther King Day at the pavilion. City was closed. They told us at 10 o'clock that morning, the parking lot was full, and there was only about 6 people in the dog park. So it's not our city employees that are doing it, and it's not our park people that are doing it, and I think that leaves it to where, what they ask us to pass on to you. Commissioner Goodman?
Just a couple of things. I'm just curious about the grant funding. When do you think the first round of cuts or questions, what the timeline? So it's due in 1st of February. Is there any indication?
I don't have that information, and I don't know if,
So Martha said that we would expect to hear around April, May, and then grant agreements would be sent out in the fall. So it's a quick turnaround on this round. Now, there's only, I think, 14 million statewide. So it's a small pool of money, so I'm not holding my breath, but it also was a short lead up to this call, which is why we jumped on it. And I went to great lengths in this staff report to make sure the public was aware that we frankly had this concept plan prepared, so we had something to submit with our application. And so to the extent we move forward, there'll be extensive public participation, because as you said, we were talking about kind of global, 35,000 foot level issues on the concept plan, but we've got to get into all the material types, like I mentioned. I will advocate against turf. And I did make a statement in the staff report that in parallel with the Duluth Dog Park projects, we have to address City Hall as well. And again, I would advocate to this body that we need to ditch the turf. We just, it's just not the right solution for that dog park. I know at other dog parks, they have similar problems, but I would be looking towards DG or another suitable alternative material. Synthetic turf, they keep making, improvements on it, but it's 7-10 times more expensive than other material types. So it's just a budget issue on that. Anyway, so I just wanted to make that point that I anticipate we'll have continued discussions with all the dog park users and stakeholders on what is the right mix of material type. Maybe it's a smaller turf area, but now you made a great point. And I did meet with Kelly Meenan last Tuesday and another gentleman, I forgot his name, and I made these points to them so that when they saw this item on the staff report, they didn't think that the concept plan was being approved, because it's not at all. But they made the point there also about having sand pits for dogs to dig in. So there's a whole range of material types that are available for different types of dogs, because different dogs have different desires, so there's a lot of thought that has to go into what we do, but I would advocate that we start considering how we remove the turf here, perhaps this summer, if there's funding allocated, and do the right material type there. Maybe it's good for the small dog park to keep the turf, but definitely want to have that continued discussion so that we can get out of the cycle we're in where we're reseeding and having the same problems in the winter, with the turf, the ryegrass just not standing up to the use that we have there.
A couple of things, if I can just do a follow-up to, 4 years ago, the subcommittee that was City Council and Parks and Recs, pleating is probably a really, dramatic word, but really encouraged the dog park users to consider artificial turf, even though it was more expensive, that in the long run, we would actually be spending less and less and less. And now, of course, with advancements, it stays cooler and there's better drainage. And I do think people are starting to rethink the ground coverage because of the problems. Rancho Mirage actually does have problems with their turf. I met with one of the engineers over there who was taking care of the park, and they actually have the same exact problems. And even though their turf is more decorative because it's center, they still have to close, they still have to reseed, it still gets torn up, they still have drainage problems. So I think we can learn from that. My question around the timeline for the grant, and we'll talk about it in the Measure J topic here. Measure J asks for our priorities, Parks and Rec's priorities, and that the largest priorities would go into the 2021 budget. But I would hate that if, let's say, restrooms and dog parks are the largest, because economically, right, that would cost the most and take the longest. I wouldn't want to be held up by Measure J because they're waiting to know whether or not we got the grant, and then all of a sudden we don't get into their funding cycle to recommend to the City Council. And that just came up as a thought when you shared the timeline.
What I would suggest you do is you request the 50% funding for the dog park. So it's like 3.3 million is I think what the full estimate in the staff report. That could go up depending on what the cost is for the netting. But to the extent we don't get the grant, it's likely a 2-year project anyway by the time. It'll take a year to get through the public participation final engineering. Then the second year in 21-22 could be the remainder of the funding. Because as I mentioned to you, it's just really difficult for us to deliver projects with the few staff I have. Even utilizing all the consultants we have, we still have to manage the consultants and review the projects and getting them out to bid. Projects anymore take 2 to 3 years from when funding's first appropriated, and then you go through the design and the bid and the construction phases. So that would be my recommendation.
Thank you.
Are there any other inputs, Commissioner Crawford?
Yeah. As far as the grant, have we looked at other opportunities to use that grant funding? It almost seems to me that there's other priorities as far as higher on the list. To me personally, specifically restrooms, children's play areas. Our children don't even have anywhere to play in the summer. Knox Oak City will be closing soon for whatever this members-only club will be. Our children no longer have a water park. We had lots of members of the community who had summer passes there. So to me, I almost think that we should look at some other opportunities for those grants. I actually went to the dog park a couple Saturdays ago when we were having the youth basketball tournament at Duluth, and I think I saw one person using the large dog park. It was horrible. It's just a pile of dirt, but I only saw one person using it. It is in the home run zone. It could be upgraded, but does it have to be $3 million? That seems really high. I'm sure if we combine the small dog park and the large dog park in the same area, that would lower the cost. I'm not sure how often you guys use Duluth. You can't park where Field 3 is and use that small dog park if you go there in the afternoon. There's no parking there. When I use that field, I illegally park in the middle. Sometimes I pull on the curb because there is no parking. So the small dog park, I don't think it would work right there. And then, like I said, my concern would just be the cost. and thinking that we had other priorities, specifically children. To me, they're a little more important than dogs.
Commissioner Armstrong?
Well, one, I think, the grant to me is a long shot. So I share Commissioner Goodman's concerns of that not delaying this at all, because $14 million for the state of California, if we get some money, it's going to be tiny, But to Commissioner Crawford's comment, I think there's a misconception about the dog parks. Sure, they're for dogs, but these are social spaces. What we learned reaching out to the community is all the connections that people have made in our community through the dog parks. I mean, if you go to the small dog park, there's a high proportion of elderly people, our elders there. Many of them, their only social contact are people they met at the dog park. That's a fact. People die. People take care of them. It's just amazing social space. And I think through our discussions, that's came out a little bit more. People say, well, these are just for dogs. These are for dogs and they're for people. And the kind of community that's built at the dog park is really just amazing. Not just people helping people, but snowbirds coming, making connections, coming back again and again, spending longer time in our community. So I think we need to be careful when we talk about dogs, because this is people space too. And it's actually one of the most well-used spaces. If you look at the master plan, which is woefully out of date, and the data in it, the small dog park, particularly space for space, foot by foot, is probably the most well-used space, public space in the city of Palm Springs.
Just to piggyback on that, to me, all of our parks are dog parks. In fact, when me and Jody were walking in Duluth, we saw someone playing in the field with their dog off the leash in the softball field. So to me, all of the parks are dog parks. I go to the wellness park, there's dogs in that park all the time. So to me, there's not only 2 dog parks. Unlike any other city in the valley, I'm not sure if they even have allow dogs in their other parks. So to me, every one of our parks are dog parks.
We will continue to look for all the grant possibilities that we can so we can work on fulfilling all of the community's needs. This particular grant really did fulfill what the dog park community was asking for, but there's a bunch of grants that we could look at to fulfill, some of the things that you're talking about. So.
You have another short comment?
Yeah, I mean, just Commissioner Crawford, that's a nice sentiment, but they're not off leash, and the people who have them off leash are illegal. But one of the things I really think as a commission that we need to think about is that we saw this with pickleball, is this pitting of different communities. I really think that that's not a good thing for our community. We've had people come here, we've had a lot of people come to our meetings, because if we go down the line, what's more important, what's our priorities, that's going to be an interesting discussion. Because it gets into a lot of greater issues for our community. The community has asked for these changes, these improvements, and that's what we're doing, hopefully.
Okay, I think we have had a good discussion and direction as to how we're going forward on that. And we can close that one and move on to our Measure J funding requests. As most of the commissioners know, we have a Measure J subcommittee. We have been working and attending the Measure J meetings since, I think, December. I started, October, November. And Ellen has joined me, David has joined me. And at our last week, Dr. Reddy asked us to be on the agenda. And I think Ellen is going to update everybody on what our position is at the Measure J with funding.
Okay. Thank you. So the Measure J's, one of the items that they discussed that involved Parks and Recs, or was perfectly aligned, was the funding for the remainder of this fiscal year. If I remember correctly, there was about, was it 400,000 or 4 million? 4 million. So there's $4 million left for this fiscal year in Measure J funding that they'll be suggesting to City Council. And so the conversation was really based around what would the priorities be for Parks and Recs between now and the end of June 2020, which is when the fiscal year ends, that are reasonable projects that could actually get accomplished. So, Marcus, like you said, a dog park, and this is different than City Hall and upgrading City Hall or re-engineering City Hall. The Duluth Park is starting from scratch. So there's a whole new engineering that needs to take place. And sadly, I agree, $3 million is staggering. And I understand that there's this excavation and engineering that wouldn't happen in some other parks. So if it takes 1.5 years or 2 years for something like the dog park, that wouldn't actually be a priority or a suggestion that Parks and Recs would make to Measure J between now and June. And so we talked about bringing back a list to Measure J of projects that we and Cynthia have that were an affordable price line that could be done by June. And those two things would actually go hand in hand. And I would use an example like curtains in the pavilion. Changing out, upgrading, and adding curtains to the pavilion. That is something that is palatable, it's affordable, it won't take 6 to 8 months to install, to purchase and install. And so I think when we discuss priorities, we should be very mindful to come back with what we think is reasonable and can be done by June. And as a complement to that, Measure J would like to hear what are our priorities for 2021. And those would be the larger capital improvements, like, for example, the restrooms or the dog park, where they could then make the suggestion to City Council, and they would have the entire year to work on that. And that really was the gist of the meeting. And one other thing that we added, we did talk a little bit about Sunrise Park and what we were told at our last meeting last month by David Reddy about a master plan, a concept for Sunrise Park. And then we did also hear it in public comments from someone who was willing to show us some schematics around a rebrand of Sunrise Park. And then somebody from the Sunrise Park neighborhood association also spoke. And then at that meeting, Chairman created a subcommittee for Sunrise Park. So at Measure J, what we did was we invited Measure J to maybe add a liaison to this alliance group. I basically called it an alliance, and it would be Parks and Recs, it would be the Sunrise Park neighborhood, it would be someone from Measure J, somebody from Arts Commission, and we'd really bring the community together and even have community conversations like we're doing with the dog park, like we did with the swim center. Measure J really, they lit up. They got very excited about it. They thought it was a great idea. Now, that might not be 2021 funding. That might be 2021 of planning and design and thought process. But they were on board for that. So those were the kind of 3 topics that was discussed. And Cynthia, you were there. Did I leave anything out?
You summarized it well. So I had sent out, or there was a handout for Measure J funding, the list of what current projects are being funded by Measure J, what was unfunded, and then the wish list. So if you want to go through that, and then we can start talking about prioritizing, then we can move this item forward, because I know Measure J is waiting to see something from us.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
I just want to add something to what Cynthia said on this list, because we did talk about it. Some of the things on Measure J's list of funding had numbers, and I stated I had no idea where the numbers came from. I remember us talking about pickleball courts at Sunrise Park, and we have no idea where $2.5 million came from. So we stated that. And then some of the unfunded capital improvements on Cynthia's list have been sitting on the books or sitting on the request pre-Cynthia, which these might not necessarily be Cynthia's suggestions for priorities. So when we kind of go through the list that you sent, we're aware some things will come off and some things would get put on. So I just wanted to share that.
So currently, Measure J has approved funding for the park restroom renovation, repairs, and ADA upgrades, giving us $1.6 million, which we did talk about earlier with Dawn and Marcus. They've also given us $100,000 to do the design for the LED lighting conversion over at Duluth for the ball field lighting. We also have set aside for the downtown park project $2 million. Should we need it? Is that
Say
correct?
that again?
It's there.
Yes.
It's all fully funded. Yeah.
It is fully funded.
We don't need any more.
So that is the list for what we did receive funding for. Some of the next list is the unfunded item, where for a couple of years now, James O'Jesse has been on the list to replace the existing flooring in the gym. Then the other one, which is the replacement or the conversion of the lighting at the ball fields to go from the metal halides that we have now to LED. The Sunrise Pickleball courts was on there, and the replacement truck for Village Fest. The replacement truck has been taking care of that, so we can take that off the list. And then the list that is after that is the wish list. So, we have the dog park for Duluth. The gym at Duluth needs an AC. It is currently done through Swamp Cooler, and I have a lot of programs in the evening where it's not a comfy environment to be doing gymnastics or basketball or any of our other sporting programs and classes that are there.
And if I could just jump in, when we did James O'Jesse's gym, I mean, that's an easy project to pretty much do because it's like $200,000 or something to put in the air conditioning units that you need and the electrical. So it sounds like it's a big project, but it's really actually pretty doable.
The curtains and acoustic improvements for the pavilion, Ruth Hardy for years has been requesting 2 new additional tennis courts. The new restrooms for James O'Jesse and the Palm Springs Dog Park. Shade structures at our parks. We are one of the only cities in the Coachella Valley who don't actually have shade structures. So if we could look at doing shade structures for some of our bleachers or some of our play areas. Repairs to playground equipment. Let me add that on there. And the ground covering for it, the tiles.
Another item that would be wonderful on the wish list is if we could upgrade the look. Curb appeal means a lot. And when you walk into our pavilion, an upgrade to that outside would run it more, I think. And just some like power washing out there and refurbish the shrubbery so it doesn't look so dirty almost. And the front entrance, we might get a lot more rentals out of that because I've talked to other groups that are using it in the area. And I'm just thinking, they said, it didn't turn us on when we first walked up there. And I'm thinking if we could just clean up the curb appeal of our pavilion area, it would help a lot on our wish list.
Just added to the list. Going further into the list, one of my dreams for this city is to figure out how to get an aquatic play area added to the pool. Like you had just stated, the Wet and Wild is gone, and it's going to be, a private surf, whatever you'd like to call it. But when we advertise recreation swim at our pool, but it really is just a few lane lines taken out of the way so that we can have kids play, and that's not necessarily what you would call fun recreation. So if one day in my 23-year tenure here before I retire, we can do that for our community. I think it would be huge for our youth population, and we could do, a lot more outings with our different kids throughout the community to come and actually play at the pool. And I think it would be a huge complementary recreation amenity that we could offer in our city. Obviously, fencing around the leisure center, the pavilion, and the pool to just limit negative activity after hours. And it'll help keep some of those resources looking nice. And then, looking at coverings for some of our baseball dugouts over at Duluth and James O'Jesse that aren't necessarily there. Purchasing 2 gators to help with, field prep or our events. And then purchasing an additional 15-passenger van because programs are growing. And a couple of times during the summer, I actually had to rent a van so that we could make sure that all of the kids could go to the outings that we're doing. And one of the things that we're really focusing on in this department is really working together as a department and not just different facilities. So we've been planning a lot of trips between the leisure center programs and James O'Jesse together to just really work on creating that unity and going out as Palm Springs Parks and Recreation Department and not just a facility. So.
Just to piggyback on that, can we make sure we don't forget Duluth? They tend to get forgot about a lot of the times. This was the first year for their backpack giveaway. I don't think they have a Christmas program. I was looking at that over the holidays, so can we not forget Duluth?
Absolutely. I will be, I'm actually got second round interviews for a recreation supervisor for that site. So as I fill that position, I expect that community center to have more and provide more, just like the leisure center in James O'Jesse, so that'll be taken care of through that position.
I saw that, I got very excited when I first said $4 million. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Dr. Reddy said to me, don't forget $2.5 million of that is already spent for lights on Indian Canyon. So we really only have $1.5 million, or are we working with all four? No. You'll spend it all?
You've got 4 plus 8, so you really have $12 million in new projects, but
It's not all for us.
no.
What we said.
When you said
Parks
$4
and
million,
Recreation is an important,
Right. But we
public
also have-
service, so you can advocate for all 12 million if you want. I mean, obviously, the library is a big ticket project. We got to start working on our other fire stations. So, I mean, we could spend it 100 times over, but yeah, it's not 12 million for parks, but that's 12 million is what Measure J has to work on with what's left over in this year. And if I could just point out, the reason we have 4 million in Measure J was because we made more revenue than we expected the last 2 years in terms of sales tax. So that was just additional revenue over budget. And it was in essentially fund balance in Measure J, and we hadn't appropriated it out. So it's good news.
Commissioner Lamort, I think you were.
Well, I wanted to add 2 things to your wish list. One of which many people complained to me that there are no real park benches in Duluth Park. It's ADA compliant, and you can get there with, but there's no place to sit down. And so that might be an easy thing to do with $4 million, just buy a couple park benches. And last month, we had someone who was suggesting that we should get better signage for the pool area. That seems like another thing that would be an easy thing to do between now and the end of the fiscal year.
Commissioner Goodman?
I think what I'd like to suggest is for some of the items, we'll be lucky if we get 1 million, guys. That's my gut instinct. But what I'd like to see is a timeline and cost. So, Marcus, you said something really interesting, and that was around the air conditioning. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, oh my God, it's a whole re-engineering of the ceiling. And if indeed it is something that can be done between now and June, and it has a price tag of $200,000, to me, that's a priority for this short term. I think a van, benches, repairs to playground equipment, acoustics and curtains, but I actually need to see what that timeline and what that cost. I don't want to go to Measure J with something that has them turn an eye to something else because it's overwhelming or too large or takes too much time. I personally would love to fit in something that, they're like, oh, that's easy, let's do that. And it doesn't take away from what we can put in for 2021.
Don, Marcus, do you know if the roof of the gym would support, or has it been checked out, would support the weight of air conditioning?
I don't know. I think at Desert Highland, we put the units on the ground.
Oh.
So it's not, if there's a space for us to put them on the ground, it's no big deal.
Oh, okay.
We do have to engage an electrical, mechanical engineer to do the drawings, but it's not as complicated. But I think Commissioner Goodman made a point, which was Measure J they have a long list of these multi-year projects. They really want to see projects that can get delivered quickly.
They have a list of 31 billion.
Yeah, well, that's a short list. I mean, we could come up with another 100 projects, but I think that the three of us can certainly put together a list of projects that we think we could get, out to bid and into construction sometime before the end of the year, which includes, repairing the playground mats, replacing defective equipment at the playgrounds, even the canopy structures. Those are pretty stock items that you can get the playground equipment people to basically give you the details for that, and it's just basically bidding the purchase and installation of it. So there's a whole handful of those types of projects that doesn't take a year to do a design, and I think we can try to come up with a list of those projects for you to consider.
Could you have those prioritized and some guesstimates for us for our next meeting?
Sure.
And we'll put it back. Commissioner Goodman, do you have any?
I just have a question about that. So there's a Measure J subcommittee. I think the information that we have is shared and in detail. The question I would have is, do we wait another month to come back for a consensus from the entire
Well, I'd say
commission?
as soon as she gets it, we'll have it to our subcommittee.
I'm just wondering, because if we wait until February, then we don't go to Measure J until March. And then that only leaves us April and May,
They are the third Thursday.
right? So it's in
Yes,
March before we
right
get to
before
them.
us.
So, I mean, I'm feeling, and I don't know how much shade structures are. I'd like that to be added to the list. I think, not just on playgrounds, but what could be out there.
It's on the list.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 items that I circled that you said. The AC, curtains and acoustic, shade structure, repairs to playground equipment, van, benches in Duluth.
Could we have those tomorrow? So we'd.
Tomorrow. But I don't know if everyone else feels
Could we have
that.
those by, let's say, the third week of the month so that we could go to Measure J the third Thursday? No later than if we had them on that Monday, then we could get together before.
So I guess my question is, are you okay with the department wish list that I have presented to you? And now if we go back and we prioritize according to what could be done quickest to the longest, that is what the commission is okay with taking to the Measure J committee?
I think the subcommittee has to be addressed.
Do we need to make that as a motion for her to give directive?
I'd like to see you go back to the subcommittee first before you go to Measure J.
Well, yes, but we won't have time to come back
To the full.
as a group
Right.
to say, yes, move this forward to Measure J, because they will meet before we come back to the table. So if you don't want to miss.
The subcommittee has the authority to move forward by the commission already, I believe, right?
That I don't
And
know.
that's, I guess I want the group to say that as a whole so that we can all move this together so that when we come back and we say, we met at Measure J and this is the list that we provided, there aren't commissioners who feel they weren't included or didn't have a say or.
So everybody go around and share their ideas.
Yeah, that's gonna take forever.
Is there something on the list that you feel isn't on here that you would like to add?
Let's go down the, Jody, do you have anything to add to that?
Nope.
Commissioner Armstrong?
No.
Commissioner Lamarck? No. Commissioner Crawford?
No.
Commissioner Goodman?
No.
Vice Chair Caldonado?
No. I just want to see this get going, let's.
I think I agree with you.
So then maybe the commission as a whole needs to assign this to the subcommittee with confidence that the subcommittee would represent the commission based on the list of the items we just talked about.
She should not, because she's on that subcommittee. We need someone not on the subcommittee to make the motion. Commissioner Diaz? You're not on the committee, so you could make the motion.
Okay. I make a motion that the subcommittee we give the commission as a whole, gives the subcommittee the authority to approve or reorganize the structure of priorities set forth for Measure J funds, and to give the okay to move forward to Cynthia and these other two lovely gentlemen here are the Measure J committee, so that we can get started before we waste too much time.
So that they can present it at the next,
So that they can present it at the next Measure J and get it going.
do we need to reiterate that, or does everyone understand what she said? Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Lamort, second. All in favor of Commissioner Diaz's motion? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. Okay, so I think we have direction that we will go with that. You'll put the ideas together and some. give us some
I will
funding?
email and connect with the subcommittee so that we can review the items that we discussed tonight and we can prepare it and get it ready for the Measure J committee.
And then
that
you'll have it on the
subcommittee is-
agenda for your next meeting where you can basically report back and.
Yes. And that subcommittee is Ellen, myself, Johnny, and David. Okay, our next one then would be discussion, report, and update from ad hoc committees. The other ad hoc committees, do you have anything from your swim committee, Jody? Charles Lamort from Restroom Committee.
No.
The Pickleball, Commissioner Goodman.
No.
Parks Naming, Commissioner Caldonado.
Unfortunately not.
We discussed the Sunrise Park Committee, and we did that with Commissioner Goodman, Commissioner Diaz, Commissioner Caldonado, and Commissioner Cohen. And they were to report back for a chair of this meeting. Do we have a chair yet?
I'm sorry, which one?
The Sunrise? We do not, okay. But if we can, those four people can get together with an idea of who's going to be the lead. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thanks, Marcus.
That covers all of our ad hoc committees. And we do have a discussion that we need to come up with. Our city council has put a proposal together through the first reading that our meetings, no commission meetings can start before 5:30. Director Alvarado has cleared this room for us for additional time the same day at 5:30. But this does not take effect until March. But do we have any other, we have discussion up here. Does anyone have any discussion as to what they recommend we do with moving our meeting? We've moved it once in this year, let's get it moved final.
So I understand, you're saying make it at 5:30, but the last.
The fourth Monday at 5:30.
Sure.
Same Monday, yeah, just starts an hour later,
Are all the commissions changing?
Yes.
all of them.
All of them have to.
And what's going to be put in place, if I may ask, about having, make sure the doors are unlocked? 'Cause
That
they
is
are
supposed
locked.
to be up to legal and all that to be sure to handle, because we did put that up to them, that they said that it would be taken care of, because everyone, 13 subcommittees all have to start meeting, and there's only 14 evenings in the month now, so everyone is moving, and thank goodness that you got us this date saved so that we're able to stay
I
here.
was the first one at the meeting, just so you know, so it was first come, first serve, so.
And we kept edging back and forth how we're going to do it. But I would say that we will begin that in March, because it's 30 days after they sign it, and they haven't.
Yeah, and
don't
they
sign
do
it
the
then.
second reading this Thursday, and then after the council approves it, then it'll be that 30-day window, so that our 5:30 meeting would start in March, our fourth Monday. I do need a vote on it.
Okay. So I'll put forth a motion that we move the Parks and Recs Commission meeting to the last Monday, which is our existing Monday of each month, from 5:30 to 7.
The fourth
I would like
Monday.
to say that I think you should make it the fourth Monday of the month.
1, 2,
Last
3,
Monday,
4.
sometimes there's 5.
Got it, fourth Monday, thank you. So we'll change that to the fourth Monday,
So
from
Commissioner
5:30 to
Goodman
7.
has made a motion for the fourth Monday at 5:30 for our commission meetings. Do we have a second?
I second.
Commissioner Caldonado, second. Do we have any discussion? Then we can bring it to a vote. All in favor of 5:30, though, on the fourth Monday of the month?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Commissioner Diaz opposed, 1, and abstain. So it is carried, and we are set for that. Okay, at this point, we have 6 minutes left. Can you believe it? It's not 6 o'clock yet, folks, and we're there. And I would like to go around and ask for commissioner comments. Commissioner Diaz has a comment that I would like to hear from.
You would like to hear it?
I would love to.
Okay. So I brought the Black History Parade and Town Fair flyer, and I'm wondering if, I know Dieter and I are in charge of putting it on, as well as Cynthia. Obviously, it's a parks thing because it's a parade. But the Parks and Recs Commission would be great if they would march or walk in the parade to support the City of Palm Springs Black History Committee. So I'm going to leave this wonderful flyer.
Commissioner Cohen has discussed it with us, and we're hoping to get not only our commission, but some of the other groups, the pickleball people, softball people, the peewee groups, and all the different groups that
That'd be
are under this to
fantastic.
work, to walk with us in that.
Do you want me to email the flyers to you? Okay.
Please. It'd be kind of fun if we rode bicycles. Like
Commissioner-
something
You'd have to
active.
compete
Like,
with the motorcycles. That could be dangerous. No, I'm just kidding.
don't they lead the march?
Great.
I'll need a 3.
You could scooter it. Scooters.
Do we have a
Skateboard. Hey,
banner?
you could have the skateboard.
Yes, you do have a banner.
Sweet.
Could have the
Commissioner
skateboarders
Armstrong,
go.
do you have a, Commissioner Lamort? Commissioner Crawford?
Yes, I would just like to add another Black History Month event will be on February 6th at 5 p.m. at the Palm Springs Art Museum. The Palm Springs Black History Committee will be collaborating with the Palm Springs Art Museum on some programming as well.
What's that date again?
I don't have a flyer. The date is February 6th, and it's 5 p.m.
If you email it to me, I'll send it out with the rest of the information.
We were waiting on the museum, so I'll reach out to the museum and see if we can get that to you.
Commissioner Diaz, did you say something?
Well, I'm always saying something, but you can't hear me. So I did ask Mayor Jeff Kors to, he's going to come and do the proclamation for that. He will be there. I know that for sure.
Which event? I'm sorry.
That's the February 6th one that Dieter's speaking about at the Art Museum.
Vice Chair Caldonado, do you have anything else to add?
No. Yes,
Commissioner
I
Goodman,
wanted
do you
to.
have anything?
I wanted to thank the guy who came around the dog signs and heat and the cars. I have seen them in different areas, and stores are putting them up. And if there is any way we can post them at the dog park, I'd like to see that happen.
Are there any other comments that Director Alvarez?
Can I go ahead and make that an agenda item then for February so we can make it official and then we can work on getting the actual signage done appropriately? Okay.
Thank you.
I don't have anything else except for thank you for all of your assistance and everything that I do, and a big shout out to the department and the staff because they do great work, and I don't think that they get showcased enough. So
I think we've got a great move going forward with our new director, and this commission has really got things going, and we're starting to see some daylight in front of us. At this point, I would like to adjourn our meeting until February 24th at 4:30, same place.